Hi, it's Steve the Grumpy Hypnotist. This is a video, a little bit of a different topic, but it relates to a lot of the work that I've done with clients, and also relates to kind of a current, sort of current event. It's not a political video or anything like that, but currently there's a candidate out there in the field who's talking a lot about the idea of a human-centered economy, and also about the future of automation and how that's going to affect the value of human labor. He's probably one of the only guys out there that are really talking about this a lot. But I used to be in the tech field, so you kind of can get a sense of a lot of the things we used to do were largely about making humans obsolete uh, through leveraging technical stuff. But anyway, so this relates to hypnosis work because I decided it's on a rainy day today because it's just a kind of rainy day out there. But anyway, um, but all these people out in these office buildings, out there working, doing their thing. Um, the idea is at some point in the near future, much of that work, even knowledge work, white collar work, obviously driving automated trucks, these sorts of things, kiosks at the service centers. Um, Much of that being automated, I think people really would benefit from planning ahead for that kind of change. And not only in larger, like macro, I'm not an economist or anything like that, but with those macroeconomic changes in the labor market, but also because with the people that I've worked with, I worked with people of all different backgrounds, of different ranges of very young people, people in the middle of their careers, people who are near retirement or in retirement. And I got to tell you, from experience, especially dealing with people towards the end of their careers and people who are in retirement, you know, I, the, there's definitely things to watch out for, because I think what can happen, of course, for retirement, sometimes for a lot of people, it's a great thing. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. But I think there's sometimes a couple of traps from what I've observed, people in that stage of their life, which and they even mentioned to me that if they knew then what they know now, they might have approached things differently, because if they knew when they were younger. So maybe this will help kind of transmit somehow that kind of learning that I've gotten from them. There's older, wiser clients, to maybe people who are watching this, to think about this ahead of time. It's a couple different areas. One is this concept, kind of goes along with that the candidate, regarding this idea of humans being thought of mainly as economic inputs. So the thing is, if when that change happens in terms of automation and that sort of thing, essentially I think it's going to be a case where many people will simply be like retired, even when they're young or middle aged or something like that, or retired, or as they would call it in England or something, like made redundant, essentially, because a lot of that type of work is not going to be needed anymore. So I think this might happen sooner than people expect in a lot of people's lifetimes. So the problem is, if a lot of these older folks have at some point realized the error, or in a situation where they built up so much of a identity around their economic value, like even if they're like very highly compensated, very well paid, successful in that sense, or just living a standard life, making a living, raising a family, that kind of thing. But then they get to the phase where their time is not valued by society as anything. And I think a lot of people have this expectation that, well, when I retire, I'm going to give back to my community, and I'll, volunteer at some charity or some nonprofit or some free volunteer work. But what I've observed there in many people in that situation, um, that sort of work, there's something about that because it's unpaid. Not that they want to get paid for doing like charity or volunteer work, but what that kind of means is that society does not value that work enough to think it's worth funding, or has an economic value if it's unpaid volunteer charity work. So, in a sense, for people like that who are deeply ingrained in their personal worth being tied to income or exchange of money, that is not a good that's not a good thing for them to be in terms of like their feeling about themselves. It just and the fact is, there's this famous management guru named Peter Drucker. I think in one of his works he's talked about he worked with like super high level CEOs and executives throughout a multi-decade career, and he talked about how so many times these executives, these people would say, "Well, I'm going to give back to the community. I'll volunteer once I retire." But what he said was that what he wrote was that in his experience, people who hadn't done that uh, throughout their whole life, people who did not volunteer, who did not do community stuff, even uh, in their youth or middle age, he said that that very rarely happened. He really saw people who thought that they were going to start doing that in retirement. It was very rare occurrence. He wrote that would ever actually come to be. Most of these people, these retired executives, found themselves kind of with nothing to do essentially, and unless they really really enjoyed like playing golf every day or futzing around that kind of thing, they kind of withered away. So, or they tried to find some way to get back to work or something like that. So that's one area I think people should be cautious about, this idea of tying in their self-worth to economic value, because again, in retirement or in future scenarios where the dollar value of human labor, or at the individual level, when people are retired thinking, oh, I'm going to volunteer, non-paid position, again, the implicit message there from society, from the world, is that, well, this isn't really worth anything. No one's not going to fund it, not going to pay you for it. So that's not a good, healthy thing to get into mentally in that state. But aside from that, there's also the idea at a smaller scale when people, spend their whole life working, and there's this concept of like where there's a reward system in everyone's brain where they need to have something to look forward to essentially, where it's something rewarding like, oh, okay, on a daily basis, or get out of here, get out of the office, get to go home. Or, oh, thank God it's Friday. I get to look forward to the weekend. Oh, or look forward to my annual vacation, a 2-week vacation or whatever. Or, in the longer term, oh, I look forward to my retirement, getting my gold watch or whatever. So there's, as long as that's in place, people are chugging along and thinking everything's fine. But once they get to the point where they have they don't have to go to work. There's no such thing as weekend. Every day is like Friday. Every day is like Saturday, Sunday. It doesn't even matter. That seems to be for some people, if they haven't taken the time over the course of that lifetime to build up other interests, where it's just been in their mind, just like mindlessly going to work, coming home, weekend. Also, if they haven't throughout their life developed interest in other things, that puts people in a really bad position, because then when they get in that phase of, well, they don't have to go to work, every day is like any other, it's all a big blur, they don't have any interests, and so it's this expectation that when they're retired and kind of maybe suffering from health issues and that kind of thing, like they're suddenly going to develop like hobbies, interests, that kind of thing, and that's a really bad spot to be in. And as I'm saying, these are things I'm picking up from people I work with at that stage of their life. Like I said, a lot of people at that stage of their life, they're having wonderful lives, traveling, all sort of great thing. But there's definitely a segment of the population who kind of wishes they had planned ahead and thought about these things. I'm not talking about retirement planning, like mutual funds, that kind of stuff. So more of these things about like making sure that over the course of your life you develop some interest, things to look forward to that go beyond work. It doesn't have to be spectacular, like climbing Mount Everest type of things. It doesn't have to be anything like that. It could just be like interest in like seeing the next episode or next season or something, or reading the next book in a series or something like that. But people really need to make sure that they develop something that they're interested in, they can look forward to. And also this concept of making sure that you don't have your identity completely wrapped around being like an economic input or output, like because at some point whether it is individual in your life or society in general. I mean, yeah, at some point humans will, it might be a good thing for them to be freed from being, just mainly judged as economic value. It might be a good thing actually, but it's going to happen at some point, whether in an individual's life or in humanity's existence. So yeah, I think it's good for people to consider that early on when they have the energy and time, and maybe not the time, but at least early on when they have the energy to kind of learn to develop these kinds of things. Once again, it's Steve, the Grumpy Hypnotist, and again, this is kind of inspired by just some of the things that are out there about some of these ideas that are coming up about these future uh, uh, changes. Okay, thanks. Bye.